You know, I'm a big fan of summer. I like summer. It's probably one of my favorite seasons. I like being able to get out in the sun, even when it's hot. I don't want to stay out there when it's hot, but I like to get out in it at least for a little bit each day. I'm a big fan. I like to cook out. I like being able to spend time on the deck with my friends, or just, you know, hang out at the pool or go to the beach. But I like being outside as opposed to being shut up in the house because it's freezing. I like summer. But one of the things about summer I don't like, and I may be by myself, but I don't like mosquitoes. Now, I don't know if any of y'all have this thing about mosquitoes, but I don't like it. I hate them. They're annoying. That little thing can take a good afternoon and make it absolutely miserable, right? You can be sitting on your front porch just watching life go by, and you zzz, zzz, you know, and it just bugs you, right? And I'm going to be honest with you, I want to kill it. I want to find that mosquito and I want to kill it. Now I know it's one of God's creations and that's probably not right. But it's a weakness I have, okay? It's just an imperfection I suffer with. But me and a mosquito aren't going to get along and be in the same space very long because one of us is going to move. It's usually me because the mosquito usually end up winning that battle. But it's a weakness I have. And it's amazing how something so small, so insignificant, so little can cause so much discomfort and can move a 265-pound man from where he is to somewhere he doesn't want to be. Isn't that amazing? That little thing. That little thing. But that's my weakness, I guess. But all weaknesses aren't small like that, are they? You know, mosquitoes can cause you pain in the neck or wherever else they want to bite you, but they cause you pain. But there are things that are much larger that cause us pain as well, right? That we all deal with on a daily basis. Things that are a little more annoying. Not everything's as small as a mosquito, is it? I mean, some things are physical, and we all know as we've aged that we've come across some physical ailments. Some of us don't walk as well as we used to. We don't bend as well as we used to. We don't keep our balance as well as we used to. A lot of things that we used to be able to do that we can no longer do. And there are some emotional things. There are mental things. There are spiritual things that keep us from living the life that God has intended for us to live. We all have our weaknesses. What's weak for Billy might not be a weakness for David or for Corey, but Corey may have a weakness that isn't the same as Jimmy, right? We all have our own set of weaknesses, right? Would you agree with that? If you're in agreement, shake your head. Yeah, okay, I want to make sure you're with me so far. We all have our weaknesses. You know, I have a set of weaknesses, and most of you, or I'm assuming all of you know, I've been having these events, or seizures, or whatever you want to call, whatever they're calling them today. But it's not, and it's not a pleasant thing. It's not the end of the world. It's kind of a thorn in my side, or a thorn in my flesh, so to speak. But it has made me in recent weeks consider or reconsider my position in that, do I really need to continue ministry? Do I need to continue to get into the pulpit? Because what would happen if I were to have one of those events or seizures right here? You see, it would be awkward for you, for me to sit up here and freeze for 5 minutes. But it would be terribly embarrassing for me. It's embarrassing enough when it happens in front of a family. But for it to happen in the pulpit terrifies me. And it's something that a real question that I have struggled with over the past few weeks. As the seizures have continued to increase, and it seems like the question isn't will there be a seizure in the pulpit, but when will there be a seizure in the pulpit? So to me, it's a very real battle, and it's a weakness for me. I see that as a weakness, as a vulnerability. And this week's scripture spoke to me. It spoke to me as I read Paul in his letter to the church in Corinth, as he spoke of his own weaknesses. Because we all have weaknesses, right? I think we're all in agreement that we all have weaknesses. And Paul is speaking of his weaknesses. And we don't know what that weakness is. It doesn't tell us. It says it's a thorn in the flesh, right? So that could be any number of things, and it's been speculated that it could be malaria, it could have been epilepsy, it could have been his chronic bad eyesight, it could have been any number of things. It's even been put out there that it could have been Alexander of Copperton, who in, I think, 2 Timothy is referred to as having done a lot of harm to Paul. It could have been any number of things. We don't know if it was spiritual, physical, or emotional. A thorn, we know it probably wasn't a real thorn in his flesh. That he was speaking metaphorically, right? Of something that was paining him, something that was hindering him. So much so that he had asked God to remove it, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And I think a lot of times we have problems, whether they're emotional or spiritual or physical, no matter what that problem is, we need to ask for God to remove those things from our life. But the answer that Paul got spoke to me. The answer that Paul got spoke directly to my heart. And I hope if you're suffering from a weakness, whether it's physical or spiritual or emotional, that it speaks to you as well. He quite simply said, my grace is sufficient. Say that with me. My grace is sufficient. That his power, that let me make sure I read it right, because you would think I would have that memorized, wouldn't you? But there goes my mind again. For my power is made perfect in weakness. My grace is sufficient, for my power is made perfect in weakness. In other words, what he's saying to Paul is, Paul, no matter what you go through, no matter what you're suffering, whether it's physical, spiritual, emotional, no matter what that is, I'm going to take care of you, Paul. That when you're weak, I can take that and I can use that, and people will see my power through your weakness. So what that says to me is that, Kenny, you can still preach. You can still get up there and deliver a message. And if an event happens, that I'll be able to use that to draw people closer. That I'll still be able to draw people and to use you in this ministry. Which is a big relief to me. Because I was truly wondering, I was truly contemplating whether my ministry, at least from this standpoint, should continue. You know, I remember, and I've talked to you before about David Ring, who's a pastor who was born with cerebral palsy. He lost his parents at a young age, and the worst was his mother, because he was a mama's boy, and he self-admitted mama's boy, and it was devastating to him. People told him he was never going to be nothing. He shouldn't even try to find somebody to love him. Nobody's going to care about you. He's what the Haitians would term as like throwaway, right? Somebody, you're defective, you serve no purpose, you're a throwaway. God doesn't make throwaways, people. Every life is precious. Every person is loved. David went on, and I've heard him speak, and I never get tired of hearing him speak. I can hear him preach, and he preaches the same basic message every time he delivers it, but I could sit there and listen to him every single day of my life and be inspired. Because he gets up there and he gives a message of hope. He gives a message in which he says to the world, God's grace is sufficient. that they told him that he'd never be a preacher, that nobody would come and listen to somebody with a speech impediment that walks around with a lip. And I think he had gotten 700 invitations. The year I heard him speak, he had gotten 700 invitations to preach, and he had preached 270 sometimes in that year. Sounds like a pretty good gig to me for somebody that nobody will come to hear. Amen? Amen. But he, like Paul, knew that God's grace is sufficient. That when you're down, when you're wondering, when you're beaten, when the world has you beat, when whatever it is you're facing, whether it's physical or mental, and there's a lot of really bad things out there, far worse than what I face, and when those things have beat you down, remember that God's grace is sufficient. That God will carry you through it. We need to put our trust in God and remember that He's there with us every step of the way. And He can take our weakness and He can still use us to draw people into a relationship with Christ, which is our ultimate goal as Christians, correct? That's our goal. But we got to do our part too. We have to face life with determination. In other words, we're going to overcome whatever those obstacles are. Paul was no stranger to hard times. If you read his letters and you read what he went through, I think 5 times he was beaten with 39 lashes, which is one less the maximum of 40, because they believe 40 would kill you. So he was beaten within an inch of his life 5 times. He survived 3 shipwrecks. He spent the night and a day in the open waters. Everywhere he went, he faced danger. The Jews didn't like it. The Gentiles didn't like it. The non-believers didn't like it. He didn't have an easy life. He spent time in prison. You understand? He had to face those obstacles, but I'm sure when he faced those obstacles, he did it with a knowledge and a full trust in God, knowing that God's grace was sufficient. God's grace was enough. Have you ever heard David Reeves preach? You would come away with the same feeling. God's grace is sufficient. But it takes perseverance. It takes not getting beat. It takes not letting life beat you down. There's a story I read this week about a girl named Sarah. She was born with a muscle missing in her foot, so she had to wear a brace all the time. But her dad, she did pretty good. She went to school, and one day she came home from school and it was field day. Her dad was kind of dreading that because, field day is filled with competitions that involve running and competing. And it's good for a normal child, but for a child who's handicapped a little bit, it becomes a little bit of a rough thing, right? So she came home and she was all excited. She said, "Dad, today was field day. It was the best day." And he was waiting for it because he was trying to, in his mind, to formulate all these things that would console her when she said, "But I wasn't able to compete, or I wasn't able to run." But before he could even get anything out, she said, "I won 2 races." He's like, "Oh, wow." He said, "Wow, that's great." And he was trying to think that she said, "Well, but I had a little bit of an advantage." And he's like, "Yeah, they probably gave her a head start or something, to compensate for her disability." And before he could even say anything, she said, "My advantage was I had to try harder." What a great attitude for life. And sometimes we're going to face adversity, and maybe we just need to try a little harder than everybody else. Maybe we need to rely on God, to trust in Him, that His grace is sufficient to carry us through those things and do our part. Have that determination that I'm going to get through this, that I worship a God who loves me and He's going to carry me through this, and no matter what the destination, no matter how the story ends, it's all good. It's all good, because finally my destination, when it's all said and done, it will be in the presence of God. A God who loves me and has carried me through every trial I've faced. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that simply amazing? I think Paul had that trust in a Father that loved him. And I think that's what got him through those tough times. I think if you put your trust in God, you're going to find that it'll get you through some tough times too. Because we all have tough times. We all have things that we have to get through. We all have races to run and obstacles to overcome. It's not unique to you. If you haven't faced an obstacle, you've been very blessed. But I'm going to tell you, there's one coming at some point. And you need to have that relationship with a God that loves you to get you through it or over it or under it or whatever it takes. You know, that determination and that trust in a father is well demonstrated in the story of a young man by the name of Holt. Excuse me, my memory is not what it used to be. Sorry, I think it was Ricky Holt. Now Ricky was born with cerebral palsy. Okay. But Ricky's dream was to run the triathlon. Now, are you familiar with the triathlon? You know what that involves? I think it's a 2.4 mile swim, if I'm not mistaken, followed by 112 miles on a bicycle and 26.2 mile run. Any of y'all want to sign up for that? But that was Ricky's dream. And in 1989, he got to live out his dream. And he knew he faced a lot of adversity, and there'd be a lot of people staring and gawking and wondering, why are you even trying this? And he knew he'd finish hours upon hours after probably all the other racers had finished. And he knew that it meant probably running in the dark, the last part, because he'd be so far behind. But yet he was determined he was gonna do it. And the account of him entering that last, as is written in the book, of him entering this last leg where he's gotten to the run part, and the looks on people's faces are pretty much what he expected. They were just kind of in shock and in awe, and the look on his face, the grimace that was on his face, you know, people could see that this was important to him, and he was really trying. And they began to applaud him. They began to pull for him. Because they could see that here this underdog was, this person who had no business being on that course, was out there giving it his all. And they said there was a roar from the crowd when he crossed that finish line. But he didn't do it by himself. You see, Ricky can't walk. His cerebral palsy wouldn't even allow him to do the simplest thing of walking. He finished 1 second ahead of his father. You see, his father had swam the 2.4 miles, pulling Ricky in a raft. He had rode the 112-mile bicycle part on a specially made bicycle with a basket in front to hold Ricky. And he had run that 26.2 miles. Pushing a cart that carried Ricky. That flashlight in the dark. That's how God our Father is with us. He's willing to do whatever it takes to get you through. He'll pull that raft. He'll ride that bike, or he'll push you in a car, whatever it is. He'll be with you every step of the way, no matter what that difficulty you have in life is. And I don't mean to diminish what you face in life, because like I said before, there's some very real problems out there. If I look look across here, I can name problems just about for every family in here that you face. But what one faces isn't what another faces. But what you all have in common, what you all possess together, is the love of a God, an amazing God, a creator God, who sacrificed his own son for each of you, who loved you that much, who promises you this very simple thing. My grace is sufficient. And all God's people said,
Amen.